Yo, what is poppin', everyone? As you can tell by the background, not on home turf today. Actually, down in Florida for the week. But as you can also tell, I'm in good hands with where I'm staying. I'm at my cousin's crib, and they're Steeler fans from Pittsburgh. We got the terrible towel in the back. It's like we're not missing a beat. But I want to go over two quick takeaways from Florida, though, before we get into some of this Steelers talk. And I do have a name for the intro segment. I was tossing and turning all night, but I think this is the one. This is the one that really got me. I think it makes the most sense. I think you guys will understand too. But Florida, get down here expecting beautiful weather. But I think I brought the Pittsburgh weather with me. It's been gloomy, cold rain, at least cold rain by Florida standards. It's like, 60 degrees. It's been raining the last 2 days, and it's supposed to rain for, I think, the next day and a half. Apparently, this is the worst weather Florida has had over the last 3 months. So I don't know what it is. I guess I bring that type of Steel City, Pittsburgh, gritty impact wherever I go. But also, the traffic here, terrible. Was in the Tampa area yesterday. I don't think I ever want to complain again about Pittsburgh traffic. It was the worst I've ever experienced. I don't know if it had to do with the rain and people don't know how to drive in the rain, but it was egregious. Start and stop constantly on 4 lanes, like the main highway and intersections and whatnot. I couldn't believe it. I don't think I've ever yelled as much in a car than yesterday whenever I was in Tampa driving around. Like, it was so bad. So no complaints about Pittsburgh traffic. And we know it can get bad up there, but those are the two things I noticed just from being down in Florida for the short time I've been here thus far. But I'm here for the week. I'll be back home for the Steelers-Browns game, and looking forward to that. And I should have a new little setup for you guys. We got some cool stuff for the new backdrop. But this one, obviously, with this terrible towel, can't go wrong. Shout out to my cousin Steve. I actually got a take from him that, we were talking yesterday, and I'll bring it up later in the show. I think it was a pretty good take. No, I'm sorry. Actually, he texted me it today. But we were talking Steelers a lot, and yeah, this has to do with our intro segment, though. Has to do with the intro segment. It'll be at the end, but my cousin Steve had a good take. Give him a shout out for letting me stay here, and then also for knowing some ball. But here's the intro segment. Here's the title. I'm going with Steelers Deekly. It was between Steelers Deekly and this week, or this Steelers week with Deke. If you look at all the other names, I just didn't know if they had enough to do with Steelers. Like, you had Daily Deke, Deke's Drops, Steel City Clickbait. Like, that was cool, but I just didn't think it had a good play on words with my name. Deke's Digest, not really Steeler related. Worldwide Deke. I really like Deke Line News, but I thought we had to do something with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I was between Steelers Deekly and this Steelers week with Deke. Outside noise isn't bad, but I feel like the stuff we're talking about isn't necessarily outside noise. It's more inside noise. It's what's going on and popping within Steeler Nation. So I think Steelers Deekly is the best. I think it's the most creative, the best play on words, and that's where I'm at. Subject to change, though, right? Let's not lock it in for ever. We can lock it in for a couple months, see how we feel about it. But let's start off the show with Steelers Deekly. You know what it is. We surf the web for Steelers news and what's popping amongst Steeler Nation, and we react to it. First, we have a little tidbit from Tomlin's press conference yesterday, and had to do with Kenny Pickett. And people are running with this, and obviously the Kenny haters are eating this up and making headlines out of it, but I don't think it's that deep. Tomlin says, certainly we're going to need more, particularly as this road narrows, but guys like Kenny and myself, we're measured by wins and losses, and he and I talk about that often and openly. He knows what our jobs are. Our jobs are to win, and so that's where we are, and that's where our focus is. I love the fact that he embraces that. So you see the headline of this tweet, though. Head coach Mike Tomlin says the team is going to need more out of second-year quarterback Kenny Pickett. So what does that make it seem like? Tomlin's calling out Kenny Pickett. Like, if you don't get your act together, we're going to have some serious conversations. Like, we're going to start questioning you. That's really not what it was. Yes, we do need more from Kenny Pickett, but you could also see he goes on to say, We need more from myself. We're measured by wins and losses. If anything, I take this quote as a big positive in Kenny's direction because it has to do, it relates to what Terry Bradshaw said a couple weeks ago and why he likes Kenny Pickett as the Steelers quarterback. Pickett is unselfish and only cares about winning, doesn't care about the stats. And I think that's the quarterback you want for your team, particularly the Pittsburgh Steelers, because that's what we're about here, just winning games. It's not always going to be pretty, can be ugly at sometimes. You got to grit it out. I think that's what Kenny Pickett is all about here. He doesn't care if Jalen Warren and Najee Harris scores a touchdown through running the ball. Doesn't care. Just wants to win the games. Now, the passing touchdowns, that'll come as he gets better and better. And I think he's already there. He's already there to the degree that we can win serious games with this dude. Now, we got a couple good tests coming up with the Browns and the Bengals. We got the Ravens later in the season. So we'll see how everything plays out. But I don't expect Kenny to go backwards. I think he's building off this momentum. I think the offense is building off this momentum that we've had since the bye. And interestingly enough, speaking of the offense, speaking of Kenny Pickett, this was an interesting stat I just saw and woke up to today from Mark Caboli. You know how everyone's been complaining about the Steelers' offense. We don't pass the ball inside enough, which I do think we should do. And Pat Freiermuth coming back this week should help with that. But look at some of the other offenses around the league compared to the Steelers. Bengals, Bills, Eagles, Cowboys, Chiefs. A lot of offenses people would consider juggernauts, right? They target the middle of the field less than the Pittsburgh Steelers. So maybe it's not the end of the world that we're not passing it in the middle of the field. Now, I do think we do. We should. We should mix it up a little bit more. But we're winning games, taking care of the ball, and that's that. That's that right now. Yeah, we can mix it up a little bit, but for the sake of what? For the sake of what? And we'll find out. Again, tough test these next 2 weeks against Browns Bengals. We'll see if our way of doing things is working or if we do mix it up. And we might, because I think that's one of Tomlin's things as a coach. I think he goes into each game thinking, how are we going to win this specific game? He's not focused on the next week. He's not focused on 3-4 weeks down the line about whether or not, should we start scheming up game plans so we're more ready for that game in 4 weeks to pass the ball in the middle of the field? No, I think he's thinking, how are we going to win this game? And since the bye, I mean, we have been passing it to the outside a lot. But maybe with this Browns game coming up, now who knows, because Deshaun Watson is going to be out for the year. Who knows how much offense we're going to need to win the game this upcoming week. Now, we obviously would like the offense to do good, but it could be a similar formula that we've had, against the Packers, Titans to take care of the Browns. But Bengals, yeah, maybe. Hey, if the game starts this way, we might have to get into more of a shootout, and we are going to have to target the middle of the field with crossers and get Pickens in the slot more and whatnot. So we'll see. Next one. I'm going to skip this one because we just re-signed him. Braden Fehoko was waived. I was devastated because we know that's one less stone on the family infinity gauntlet, but now we re-signed him back to the practice squad. So I think that still counts. Tomlin also mentioned inside linebacker solutions yesterday in his press conference. Says there's no plans to look outside the organization for replacements. So that means it will be internally, like practice squad players, Michael Walker, and we mentioned him a couple streams ago. Brooke Pryor also mentions that he's not on the practice squad, that is Michael Walker, for just development, but to ready himself for the moment to step in, which Tomlin says will probably happen this weekend. Makes sense. We are down our two starting linebackers in Quan Alexander and Cole Holcomb. I'm just a little disappointed we're not looking outside the organization. I think Reuben Foster would be a good candidate. He played on the USFL this last year in the city of Pittsburgh for the Pittsburgh Maulers, and he played good. He got banged up a little bit midway through the season, but finished it. It's not like he had a season-ending injury or anything, and he's a little bit removed from playing football, so he should be rested up. I think he's got that type of talent that Quan Alexander brings to the table. Now, it could be a little rusty for the first week or two, but he's got massive upside. I wouldn't mind giving him a call. Nick Kwiatkoski is another name. We had him in-house over the offseason. I thought he did good things for us in the preseason. He's proven in that he's started some games in the league. He's also a decent special teamer. Would just provide good quality depth. That would be a no-brainer. I also wouldn't mind calling up Miles Jack. we know Miles Jack's pretty good. He did good for us last year until we got hurt those, last 3-4 weeks of the season. Banged up, didn't look like himself anymore, but I wouldn't mind calling Miles Jack back. Familiar with the system, has the talent, not too old, but he did announce his retirement, so who knows what type of shape he's in, not only physically but mentally, because when he retired, he said he was interested in starting a trade, getting into the electrician business or, carpentry or whatnot. So who knows? I think we'll be all right for the time being with Walker and then Mark Robinson. We also have Tariq Carpenter and then obviously Landon Roberts. We'll bump Keanu Neal from safety to inside linebacker if we need to. I think we'll be fine, but if things start getting shaky in the middle of the field, we might have to look for outside help. Last one I wanted to bring up. Deshaun Watson, news broke today, out for the season. What does this have to do with the Steelers? Well, we play the Browns this week, so we won't be facing Deshaun Watson. Now, I thought it would be P.J. Walker, but I just saw another report. It's going to be the rookie out of UCLA. I get his name botched up. Isn't it Dorian Thompson? But then there's another last name in the middle there. Dorian Thompson. I like that for the Steelers, obviously. And here's the point that my cousin brought up. I thought this was a very good one. Looking back to last week then, remember how we were going into that Browns-Ravens game as Steeler fans? Like, who do we want to win this, right? Because it seems just to be a lose-lose scenario. If the Browns win, you look up and they're 6-3. It's like, man, the Browns 6-3? That's just no good. That's just weird. You never want to see the Browns with a winning record like that, let alone tied with the same record as us. And then if the Ravens would have won, though, they just would have got another step up in the AFC North. But now with Deshaun Watson getting hurt, I feel like everything played out as we would have liked as Steeler fans last week. Because let's be real, the Browns not having Deshaun Watson is not good for their prospects long term, not only making the playoffs, but also being a legitimate contender in the playoffs. Now, I didn't really think they were to begin with because the Browns are the Browns. But now with Deshaun Watson out, you go from him to Dorian Thompson. That ain't hitting the same. Not only is that going to help the Steelers this week, but I think long term, the Browns, they're going to start folding. They're going to start going downhill. They're going to be trending backwards. So for them to pick up that win against the Ravens, I think is helpful for the Steelers, particularly in trying to win the division. So good take by my cousin Steve. Give him another shout out. And I saw today, as soon as the Deshaun Watson news came out, the betting line started moving. It went from 4.5 to 2.5 in like the snap of a finger. It might even be closer to even as I'm talking right now. But let me check in with the chat real quick. Who is in the house on this fine Wednesday? And then we'll talk about the main topic, and that is whether or not Tomlin is a Coach of the Year candidate. Let me just switch up the screen real quick. Richard Hunt says, plus Chubb is out too. Yeah, he's been out since that Monday night game when we played him. We got Kenny Takes in the house. MT has to go. Most of Kenny's problems come from your buddy, mediocre Mikey. Wanting to run this stupid conservative offense, and KP's scared to death to throw an interception. Kenny is a little banged up, too, with the ribs. I know we don't want to talk about it, and I don't want to talk about it that much because if you're on the field, no excuses. You should be making your throws. But that could have a little bit of a factor in why he's missing some of the easier throws recently. Could be. But I don't think – see, you're making it a bad thing that Tomlin wants to maybe more or run more of a conservative offense. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. And here's what I'll say, too. I don't think we're running a conservative offense against the Titans. Pickett missed some throws. Deontay had some drops. No, Deontay had drops. He probably had a drop in the Titans game. He had more drops in the Jaguars game and had a drop last week against the Packers. Pickens missed the toe tap. So, we left points out on the board. I think if we executed on all those, we would have dropped 30. I don't think we would have been calling the offense conservative then. But last week, with how the second half played out and with us getting off to that fast start with 17 points in the first half, I don't think we needed to do anything crazy or be super aggressive because the game was still imbalanced. The game was still close. And a turnover could have been game-breaking. So we played a certain style, a more conservative style in the second half of the Packers game. But I do think it made sense with just how the game flow was going. Ahmad T13 says, I haven't seen a Fire Canada chant in a while. I know. I took a picture with someone holding up a terrible towel, and it was backwards. He wrote in Sharpie on the back, Fire Canada. I should actually probably post that to Instagram. I might, maybe today or tomorrow. It's a funny pic. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense why we're not calling to Fire Canada, because the offense has looked better. And our miscues, if you're watching the games, you know it's from the players just missing. And it's a mix of everything. Pickett missing throws, O-line. And trust me, O-line has been playing a lot better. But O-line will, give up some pressure here and there. Deontay drop, Pickens not toe tapping. Happens. Richard Hunt says, the only issue with the Steelers offense is we have to hit when we have an opportunity. We just don't give ourselves a lot of opportunities. We have been, though. We've been moving the ball. We've been getting in the red zone. Like, we had 23 points last game. That's not the end of the world. As I mentioned in the last stream, and, I compared the Steelers, last 4 games since the bye versus the last 6 games with the Chiefs and last 6 games with the Bills, 2 teams that most consider, offensive juggernauts. We're like actually pretty close in terms of points per game. We're not far off. Sometimes we were equal, but then we're talking about only a 3-point difference in some of the other games where they might have like 27 points. We've been getting, up to 20, 23 points. It's not far off. And you can see if we just make another play or two, we'll be right in that high 20s, potentially 30s range. What? When did this happen? Richard Hunt says Tomlin called Broderick an overgrown toddler. Why did he say that? That's pretty random. Remix 84. This is a good transition. It says men play for Mike T. He never loses the locker room. That's not the same for most organizations. All right, let's talk about it. Coach T for Coach of the Year. How we feeling? I say, yeah, why not? Why not? Because first, be in the mix for Coach of the Year, your team has to have a good record. It's as simple as that. The dude that wins Coach of the Year has a good record. Their team makes the playoffs, team wins the division, 1 or 2 seed, whatever it is. And right now, the Steelers sit at 6-3, tied for the 5th best record in the NFL. So you could like it or you could not like it. You could care about the style points, the total point differential, and if we're being outgained or not. But the Steelers have the fifth best record in the league, AFC and NFC, across the board. And obviously, that is a prerequisite for being Coach of the Year. Your team has to do good. And the Steelers are doing good. We have one of the top records in the league. Another thing for Coach of the Year is storyline. It's not necessarily about who is the best coach at a given moment. Because if that was the case, Andy Reid, Bill Belichick, guys like Mike Tomlin would have way more Coach of the Years than what they do right now. And I think we can agree. We kind of do this with every award. MVPs, we like a story. Because, over the last 3-4 years, it would be pretty easy to say, well, when did Ben retire? After Ben retired, it'd be really easy to just give it to Patrick Mahomes every time. But when Ben was here, yeah, I mean, that dude was, right? I mean, that MVP, no. Anyway, Mahomes, like last year or two, you could just give it to him easily. Well, he did win last year, actually. He did win last year. Who was the year before that? Who was the year before Mahomes for MVP? I don't remember. You get my point. Actually, I'll give a better comparison. NBA with LeBron James. He probably could have won the MVP award legitimately 70% of the seasons he's played. But the voters like a good storyline. They give it to Derrick Rose the one season. They give it to Russell Westbrook the one season. They give it to James Harden. Who's really the MVP? When push comes to shove, you want this dude leading your team when games matter. And that's LeBron James. But we really, really do it for Coach of the Year. Like, it's not even a question that the voters in the NFL love the storyline. Love it. Oh, Rodgers. Okay, thank you. Yeah. Rodgers won back-to-back before Mahomes won it last year. Yeah. Rodgers had some good seasons there. I'll give him credit. For those. But again, MVP. We're talking MVP. I don't know if I trust Rodgers like that in the playoffs. I trust Mahomes way more than Rodgers. But with Coach of the Year, back to what I was saying. Like, they love the storylines. Because you had last year Brian Dable win Coach of the Year. Is he the best coach? No, I wouldn't say that. But it was the best story. Turned around the Giants. They gritted out wins. Finished, what did they finish? 11-5, 11-6. A couple years before that, Kevin Stefanski. Browns. They actually make the playoffs after, how long of a drought was that? Like 2 decades. Give it to Kevin Stefanski. He wasn't necessarily the best coach of the year, but had the best storyline. Like, he wasn't better than Belichick or Andrew. Like, you wouldn't take him over those guys, right? You wouldn't take him over the top 3 or 4 coaches in the league that given season. But cool story. Turned around the Browns. Mike Vrabel, a year or 2 before that, turned around the Titans. So where are we at in terms of storyline? Well, think of the expectations all the pundits had heading into the season. They had the Steelers bottom of the AFC North. They had the bookies. They had our over-under win total at 8.5. So that's missing the playoffs. And just not being as good or as explosive as the Bengals or the Ravens. We were going to be either 3rd or 4th in division. That's what all the pundits, what all the media was saying about the Pittsburgh Steelers. That was the expectation, right? Yet, here we are. That's one aspect of the storylines, because you take the expectations of this team going into the season and you match it with where we are now, we're outperforming. Tomlin is doing more with less. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that to the fullest extent, because I do think we have talent on this roster. But there's a story there. There's a story. Second season without Big Ben at the helm at quarterback. We're taking this team with a young quarterback, starting to turn things around. We finished last year 9-8. A lot of the pundits didn't think we're going to get back to that elite status, but here we are. We're sitting at 6-3, a top 5 record that I would say is looking good for playoff hopes, right? Playoff contention. We just got to keep winning, obviously. But the second thing is the injuries we've had to deal with, because going back to the whole more with less, we got Deontay Johnson and Cam Hayward in week 1 getting hurt and out for – Deontay was out 4 weeks. Cam Hayward was out for like 7-8 weeks. Those are 2 dudes we're paying a combination of $40 million. Deontay's a Pro Bowl receiver. Cam Hayward's an all-pro / Pro Bowl defensive tackle, borderline Hall of Famer. But we're still 6-3. Lost our best tight end in Pat Frymouth, our starting tight end, for a good 4 weeks. Still winning. Minka Fitzpatrick, best safety in the league. He's been out for multiple weeks. And then, most recently, we lost our starting inside linebackers. I get it. Injuries happen all across the league, but you got to credit some coaching for that. Have guys step in, do their jobs when we're missing some of our higher-end talent. But to just go out there and not miss a beat. It's something to do with Mike Tomlin, no? But also think about the drama surrounding this team. Tomlin's been able to push that aside, diminish it, and just continue to be a leader and shut out the outside noise. Now, you got the fire candidate chance from the fans. The offense is looking pretty rough. Tomlin's getting questioned week in and week out. What are you going to do with the coordinator? Is the offense going to change? He stayed steady. And to his credit, we have turned things around after the bye, particularly on offense. Pickens, some of his drama on the sideline, some of his drama on social media, it's just a pebble in Mike Tomlin's shoe. Sticking and supporting his young quarterback through ups and downs. Like, these are all things that matter if you're a leader. Not getting the noise to become too loud, not getting it to affect the locker room to where you start losing games and getting on a skid. Because if you think about it, when we get to Sundays, it doesn't feel like any of that outside stuff, drama affects us at all on the field, right? And that's credit to Coach T. Big credit to him. Also made necessary adjustments when needed. And a lot of us would have liked him to make these adjustments quicker than he has. It seems like everything's playing out well for us because you got JPJ starting to become the starter for us, like over these last, 3-4 weeks, and he's been locked down. Broderick Jones starting to get in the lineup on the offensive line, and our offensive line hasn't looked better. So he's making the adjustments, not afraid to get the young guys in there. Again, would we have liked it to be a little bit faster than what it was? Sure, but maybe this was the best way to do it. Gain them a little bit of experience, particularly JPJ, because you can only do so much with Broderick Jones. You only start one guy at each position on the offensive line. JPJ came along slow, got a little experience here and there, and then suddenly, after this bye, lockdown starter for us. And he's been awesome. And then Broderick Jones, seeing that he's, been in the lineup after an injury to Dan Moore, and then after the whole thing with Chooks, that's another, I guess, little drama thing right there, the Chooks stuff. No one's really talking about that. I mean, it was brought up, but it's not affecting anyone. You get what I mean? Like, we're talking about it out here. But yeah, we benched our starting right tackle. Doesn't seem like Tomlin's lost the locker room due to it. If anything, it goes back to what we've said about his strategy and his style. He's upfront about it. I think that's something that players really like. He's upfront about, this is why we benched you. This is what's going on. Yeah, we're going to go with this guy over you, and this is why. But yeah, we get to see Broderick Jones for a game or two, and he plays well, and Tomlin's sticking with him. It could be the opposite, where he goes back to some of his old ways, or stubbornness, as we like to call it. Tomlin's really stubborn. Yeah, we're just going to play the veteran because he's the veteran. Or even the fact, too, not only have we played JPJ, we're having him follow the opponent's best receiver, DeAndre Hopkins, Tennessee Titans, Thursday Night Football. That is something that Tomlin and his Steelers defense has not done at any time throughout his whole tenure being a head coach. But he's making adjustments. He's getting up with the times. Jaylen Warren getting more carries, seeing the obvious nature of what's going on with our running back position between Warren and Najee Harris, and saying, like, yeah, even though we drafted Najee in the first round, I think Jaylen Warren deserves more carries. And that's been happening. Getting Matt Canada on the sideline. We're undefeated with Matt Canada on the sideline. The offense hasn't looked better than when Matt Canada has been on the sideline. And that was a big adjustment. Matt Canada has never been on the sidelines for us. But Tomlin, willing to make adjustments. Willing to do whatever it takes for this team to get an edge, to get a win. So you look at all these things at play. Not only do we just have a good record, we're one of the top 5 teams in the league right now, based off record. The storyline element of expectations for the Steelers weren't that high. Had us as like a middling team missing the playoffs, over under win total at 8.5 wins. But then to see us where we're at right now, like, that's a little bit of a story. And then you got the drama we've been dealing with, Tomlin's ability to shut that outside noise, not lose the locker room, and the fact he's making adjustments that are, like, legitimate. These aren't just like willy-nilly things. Now, these are like legitimate adjustments, and they're helping the team. These are decisions that have to be made. He's making them. So, yeah, I think Tomlin for Coach of the Year, why not? Like, he's got to be in the top 3 or 4 right now. Obviously, you got teams with other good records, like the Lions. That's a pretty good story right there. That would almost be like Stefanski turning the Browns around. Although Campbell's had a couple years being the Lions head coach, but if they finish with like a 1 or 2 seed, like, that's an amazing season for Detroit. I would understand that. So we got a couple weeks coming up. We got division opponents. If we end up finishing 12-5, win the division, we're like a 1 or 2 seed. Again, with the expectations that were put on this Steelers team, and the fact, too, that, we haven't outgained an opponent. We have, I think, a negative point differential whenever you total up all the games that we've played thus far. You put all that together, and we're finding ways to win. it is a credit to Mike Tomlin. No, it's a credit to coming in with a plan and not blinking. Like, despite everyone being so upset with how we're winning, we just step in and say, yeah, all right, you guys can complain. It's whatever. We'll just take dubs. We'll sit here and be 6-3, right in the mix for the playoffs. Here's my thing, too. If you had all this stuff happening with another team and like another coach, I feel like Steeler fans would give that coach, like, Mike Vrabel or John Harbaugh. We've seen this type of stuff happen with their respective teams, right? Winning due to injuries, winning ugly, like, we would give them more credit than what we're giving Tomlin. I do think, I'm talking specifically to Steeler fans. I think Steeler fans take what Tomlin has done for granted and how we are consistently just winning and consistently being in the mix and how he brings that to the table. Whereas I think the outside media gets it a little bit more, like national media. They have more respect for Tomlin than what we do in-house. But yeah, if we continue on this path, finish 12 like, why not? The storylines are there. What Tomlin has done in terms of adjustments, what he's done in terms of shutting out the outside noise and not losing the locker room and just straight up winning, being a good head coach. Being a good head coach. And I think all that is in front of us this season. The 12-5 record, 11-6 record, in contention for the division, being a top seed in the AFC. It's all there. We talked about the easy schedule. Browns just lost to Sean Watson. We're playing them this week. It's all right there in front of us. We'll see. Yeah, and Tomlin will be a legitimate Coach of the Year candidate, I believe. What are you guys saying? Richard Hunt says, I think what isn't talked about is how good Coach T has been with losing big-time players for a significant amount of time. Cam, DJ, Pat, Minka. Yeah, exactly. Throw that into the mix. Exactly. Yeah, we're still here. Those are big guys. Those are big-time players. Those are players we're giving a lot of money to. Remix 84, only one team wins the playoffs. So every year, 31 teams have a disappointing season. Compared us to others. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to there. D-Rich 16. Dan Campbell is a genuinely good coach, and I wouldn't mind him winning Coach of the Year because of how he has turned the Detroit franchise around. Mike should be higher, though. Yeah, I think Tomlin's in the mix. You got Campbell in the mix right now. Reed will always be in the mix, but again, I don't think Reed's a favorite just because he's been doing it for so long and being so good for so long. People like the story. The voters like the story. They want to mix it up a little bit. Richard Hunt says Mike T is plus 1,600. Okay, that's his odds right now. Nick Sirianni, yeah, he'll be in the mix too. Yeah, the Eagles are good. They have a good record. If they finish 15-1 or something like that, and let's say all the other teams are behind them by like 2 or 3 games, like the next best record across the league is, let's say, 13-4. Yeah, I got my records messed up. He would have, let's say, yeah, Eagles finish like 15-2. And then the next best record is 13-4 or like 12-5. Then, yeah, they might give it to him just because of that win differential he has over the rest of the league. Pete Carroll, I don't know. We'll see how they finish up. Harbaugh would probably be in the mix too. But yeah, Coach T's done a really good job. A really good job this season, no? Despite the media, despite so many other people telling him to, you got to switch it up. You got to do it different here. You got to fire Canada. You got to start winning a different way. You got to start winning prettier. Now, we're just going to win. We're going to play to win. No matter how that ends up looking on Sunday, we're not going to apologize for it. If it ends up being that we outgain you, fine. If not, whatever. We'll take the win. And that's what he's going with. Richard, this is a great one right here. This is what I was getting at. He says, Coach of the Year is always the new shiny toy, in my opinion. Yep. Like Kevin O'Connell with the Vikings, that would be a good one. The storylines are there for sure. Starting off rough, losing your starting quarterback Kirk Cousins, bringing in Josh Dobbs off the street. If they somehow win the NFC North, that's going to be tough because of the Lions. But if they somehow, make the playoffs, end up with a good record, he would be in the mix. Definitely. But there's no reason for Tomlin not to be in that conversation. You get what I mean? There's no reason why he wouldn't be in the conversation for everything that's taken place. This year. We've gotten off to a rocky start, but we've calmed the waters. Get to 3-2, heading into the bye. It's, somehow, some way, we're winning these games. The first 4 or 5, somehow, some way, first 4 or 5 weeks, pulling it out, turnovers, defense, scoring touchdowns, last minute drives. Yeah, like barely crossing the 50-yard line for the majority of the game, but then coming up clutch. But these last few weeks, man, we're looking more and more like a complete team. I am worried a little bit about the defense with these inside linebackers injuries. So I'll be really interested to see how we respond. But that'll be another feather in Tomlin's cap. If we can get the defense playing up to the standard that we've been at with us missing our starting inside linebackers, be impressive. 60 rings. I'll read this comment and I'll get out of here. He says it's a philosophy called bend but don't break, like a perfect, strong archery bow. There's always been the Steelers mentality. Defense wins championships. That's a good comment to close on. Big shout out to you guys. Enjoy the rest of your week. I will, down in Florida, man. Like I said, I'll be back into Steel City for Steelers-Browns. We'll be doing a post-game report right here, live on Bleach Report. So looking forward to that. See you guys then, and stay chilling. Peace out.